A robot fell down just a few meters from the finish line of a half marathon and still beat the human world record by 6 minutes. That happened just recently in Beijing. And it's the least strange thing I'm going to tell you about today, because also recently, a vitamin that you can buy at any pharmacy turned out to be the key to a specific class of cancer cells needed to survive. A software company also started measuring its resources needs in gigawatts instead of a head count, and nearly half of all new music uploaded to a major streaming platform turned out to be synthetic, with almost nobody being able to tell the difference. Let's get into it. The Beijing E-Town Half Marathon is now in its second year. Last year, the fastest robot finished in 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is roughly the pace of a casual human jogger. But Sunday, an Honor Lightning humanoid crossed the line in 50 minutes and 26 seconds, beating the human world record held by Jacob Kiplimo by more than 6 minutes. And the robot fell meters before the finish, got back up, still set the record. 300 robots from about 100 Chinese institutions ran alongside 12,000 human runners. About 40% of those robots were fully autonomous. No remote control, no human operator. And Honor swept the top 3 spots. A separate remote-controlled version clocked 48 hours, 19 seconds, but the autonomous one, that's the story, because autonomous means the machine handled the navigation, the balance, the terrain variation, and pacing by itself in real time on a public course, with people around it. Now you might be thinking, okay, a robot ran fast. Neat trick, so what? The so what is the curve. 2 hours, 40 minutes to 50 minutes in just 12 months. That's a 68% reduction in completion time. In a domain that combines mechanical engineering, real-time environmental navigation, and energy management simultaneously. No single software update produces that. The gains came from everywhere at once. 95-centimeter legs designed after elite human runners, liquid cooling systems borrowed from smartphone thermal management, and the autonomous perception and control stack that, of course, ties it all together. The Century Report has tracked physical AI through Pi 0.7, directing robots through tasks that they'd never been explicitly trained on, just 4 days ago. What the Beijing Half Marathon adds is a raw athletic performance on top of cognitive flexibility. These aren't separate trends. These are the same capability stack: perception, planning, and motor execution, but just in different contexts. And the institutional count matters a lot more than just a winning time. One record-breaking robot, that's a tech demo, right? But 100 organizations fielding functional bipedal platforms simultaneously, that is an ecosystem that is broken past the integration bottleneck. For decades, only a handful of labs could build a walking humanoid. That constraint was never primarily mechanical. It was the perception and the control software. And software diffuses on a software timeline, which means next year's race won't just be faster, it'll be bigger. Let's shift away from robots measuring their performance in minutes to companies measuring their needs in gigawatts. Anthropic announced yesterday that Amazon is investing $5 billion in the company. And in return, Anthropic is committing to spend over $100 billion on AWS over the next decade. That's not a typo. That's $100 billion in cloud compute from a single customer. And the deal secures Anthropic access to up to 5 gigawatts of computing capacity running on Amazon's custom Trainium chips, including Trainium 4, which hasn't even been fabricated yet. Let's make this unit of measurement really land here. 5 gigawatts is roughly 5 large nuclear power plants. When your company's resource needs are denominated in the same units as a regional power grid, you've crossed a categorical boundary, obviously. They're not a software company anymore. I don't think they have been for a while. They're something closer to an energy concern that happens to produce intelligence. And the financial structure here, it's genuinely new. Amazon invests $5 billion in Anthropic. Anthropic commits to spend $100 billion on Amazon's cloud. The capital flows in a circle. But what it purchases is real. This is physical data centers, custom silicon, and power infrastructure that will shape what kinds of AI research Anthropic can do for the rest of the decade. Anthropic's research trajectory is now partially bound to Amazon's chip engineering roadmap, the same way that OpenAI is bound to both Amazon and NVIDIA after February's $110 billion round. These arrangements kind of blur the line between investor, consumer, and supplier until the categories barely hold anymore. This is the third such circular deal in recent months. The template is becoming the dominant financial mechanism for frontier AI, and the structural question it raises isn't about any individual company. It's about what kind of infrastructure gets built when compute at this scale is locked into decade-long bilateral arrangements. 5 gigawatts dedicated to one company's research is 5 gigawatts unavailable for anything else. Whether this infrastructure serves broad human capability or concentrates into captured advantage depends, of course, on governance architecture that, as the Century Report has tracked since February, is still being contested in courtrooms and conference rooms simultaneously. Fervo Energy's IPO filing, which was also reported yesterday, sits directly alongside this. Fervo disclosed 3.65 gigawatts of enhanced geothermal projects under construction or in advanced development, and 42 gigawatts of total leased potential across the American West. Those numbers would nearly double America's entire installed geothermal capacity. And the cost trajectory is remarkable. Between 2022 and 2025, Fervo reduced drilling times by 75% and per foot costs by 70%. And the engineers doing this work, many of them crossed directly from shale oil and gas drilling. Same rigs, same horizontal drilling techniques, same muscle memory, but redirected from extraction to generation. Previous energy transitions required building entirely new workforces from scratch, which is why they took decades. This one is cannibalizing an existing skill base whose demands curve is already declining. Now, meanwhile, MISO, the grid operator for 15 Midwestern states, projected yesterday that peak electricity load will grow 35% by 2035, with data centers consuming a quarter of all electricity by 2040. So here's that picture. The demand is arriving faster than any existing procurement mechanism anticipated, and the supply, geothermal, solar, firm, clean power, is arriving on a steep cost curve that the financial system is now just pricing through an IPO. The demand signal and the supply capability are converging at the same moment. This is not a coincidence. This is the physics of the transition expressing itself through the market. Okay, different kind of system, but the same structural logic. A team at the University of Lausanne published a finding in Molecular Cell that reframes how we think about cancer's most frustrating survival trick. Many tumors are addicted to glutamine, an amino acid they depend on for growth. Oncologists have tried to exploit that addiction therapeutically for years. Block the glutamine supply, starve the tumor. Logical, except it kept not working, because cancer cells are metabolically flexible. When you cut off glutamine, they reroute. They switch to using pyruvate or another carbon-rich molecule as fuel. The Lausanne team traced the escape route to its checkpoint. The rerouting requires a specific mitochondrial enzyme called pyruvate carboxylase, and pyruvate carboxylase requires vitamin B7, biotin, to function. No biotin, no enzyme. No enzyme, no escape route. The tumor stays addicted to glutamine, and glutamine blocking therapies actually work. So what does that mean if you or someone you love ever faces a glutamine addicted tumor? The problem was never that the therapy was wrong. It's that the cancer always had a back door, and the back door had a lock, and the lock needs a vitamin you can buy for $8 at a drugstore. Now, let's be precise here. This doesn't mean taking or avoiding biotin supplements treats a cancer. No, the finding simply identifies a molecular mechanism. What it opens is the possibility of combination therapies that block glutamine and simultaneously block the biotin-dependent escape route. You close the front door and the back door at the same time. The researchers also found something about a gene called FBXW7 that's frequently mutated in certain cancers. When FBXW7 is mutated, pyruvate carboxylase partially disappears on its own, which means those specific tumors are already more dependent on glutamine than anyone realized. That's a biomarker, a way to identify which patients' tumors are most vulnerable to glutamine blocking therapy before you start treatment. The Century Report has tracked this arc through the University of Geneva's mirror molecule finding, Stanford's BRP peptide, and the University of Chicago's zeaxanthin T-cell work. Each one reveals a different dimension of cancer's metabolic machinery, and each one follows the same logic. Cancer's flexibility which we've always framed as the problem, is itself a map of vulnerabilities. Every escape route has its own dependency chain, and dependency chains have choke points. You don't have to block every possible metabolic path. You have to find where multiple paths converge on a single bottleneck, and then simply remove it. And we're getting there. Okay, shifting away again from biological systems that can adapt to survive to creating an ecosystem being flooded by something it can barely detect. Deezer disclosed yesterday that 44% of all new music uploaded to its platform is AI generated. That is roughly 75,000 tracks per day, and 97% of listeners cannot distinguish them from human-made songs. That number, 75,000 tracks a day, exceeds the total number of songs released worldwide per day as recently as 2019 on one platform in one day. More synthetic music than the entire global recording industry produced daily just 7 years ago. Now you might be thinking this means AI music is taking over listening, but it's not, at least not yet. AI generated tracks account for only 1 to 3% or so of actual streams on Deezer, and 85% of those streams are actually fraudulent, bot traffic gaming the royalty system. So the current picture is less that AI conquered music and more that AI is flooding the upload pipeline and then using fake listeners to extract money from the royalty pool that's supposed to pay human artists. Deezer is the only major streaming platform transparently tagging AI generated content. Spotify and Apple Music have not disclosed comparable numbers, which means this is almost certainly an industry-wide phenomenon that only one company is so far willing to measure publicly. But I think there's a deeper signal here, though. The supply curve of recorded music has broken free from the production constraint. Human creative labor that defined its economics for over a century. What scarcity answered, abundance now asks. If the listener genuinely cannot tell the difference, what exactly is being valued when someone chooses to listen to a human artist? The answer probably isn't sonic, it's probably more relational. Provenance, biography, the knowledge that a particular arrangement of sounds emerged from a particular life. That is the same shift that's transformed painting after photography made realistic depiction available to everyone. The value migrated from the output to the origin story. That migration took visual art roughly 50 years. Now, at 75,000 tracks per day, music may not have 50 months. So if you are a working musician listening to this, the economic pressure is real, and of course, I don't want to minimize it. Jobs are getting more and more scarce in every industry right now. Fraudulent bot streams draining a royalty pool that's already thin is a direct extraction from your livelihood. The governance questions around attribution, compensation, and platform responsibility, those aren't abstract questions for you, they're rent. What emerges from this, though, will define whether the abundance of synthetic creation lifts human artists by handling the commodity layer, such as background music, functional audio, and sonic wallpaper, while concentrating human attention and dollars on work that carries a story, or whether it drowns that signal in noise. That outcome isn't determined by the technology. It's determined by the rules that we build around it. And right now, those rules barely exist. Okay, one more for today. Siemens launched the Eigen Engineering Agent. This is generally available after pilots with 100 companies in 19 countries. This is an AI system that operates inside real industrial automation projects. It writes PLC code, the logic that controls factory machinery. It configures devices. It generates the human-machine interface visualizations that operators actually look at on the factory floors. The performance numbers, 2 to 5 times faster than manual engineering, 80% higher solution quality, 50% greater overall engineering efficiency. Prism Systems in the US said code creation dropped 2 seconds. But the detail that caught me here is the onboarding story. New engineers who previously spent weeks learning project structure and component relationships, essentially apprenticing under senior engineers who carried all the context in their heads, can now query the project directly and get accurate, contextualized answers immediately. That is a shift in what the word expertise means. The traditional model assumed that project knowledge transferred slowly through proximity over years. That was apprenticeship. If that knowledge now lives in the project itself, structured, queryable, instantly accessible, then expertise migrates from years of accumulated context to quality of questions asked. And that extends the pattern that the Century Report has documented on April 12th, when Cisco described engineering teams shifting toward a model of just 2 people and 6 agents. Siemens is doing the same thing, but in industrial control systems with safety requirements that pure software just doesn't face. The fact that it works in production across 19 countries means the transition from software-only AI capability to physical infrastructure AI capability is further along than most people appreciate. Okay, a few quick releases from yesterday. Moonshot AI shipped Kimi Vendor Verifier. This is a tool that checks whether inference providers serving Kimi models are actually returning accurate, consistent results. So think of it as quality control for the AI supply chain. OpenWeb UI released a desktop app that bundles Llama CPP for local inference. So if you want to run models on your own machine without touching a terminal, this is a clean on-ramp. And you used to have to be dependent on the browser version of OpenWeb UI to make this work. Now there's a dedicated desktop app. And Right Now AI released OpenFang. This is an open source agent operating system that runs tool code in WebAssembly, and it has fuel metering, which basically means a sandbox execution for AI agents and built-in cost controls as well. Okay, closing out today. A robot fell down, got back up, and still beat every human who's ever lived at 21 kilometers. A software company started measuring its future in gigawatts, the unit for power plants, not products. A vitamin turned out to be the key that lets cancer cells escape, the one therapy designed to kill them. 75,000 synthetic songs appeared on a single platform in a single day, and almost nobody could tell that they weren't made by people. A factory apprentice that used to need weeks of shadowing a senior engineer got its answers in seconds. Very soon, watch for Fervo's IPO pricing, because how the market values the first next-generation geothermal company will signal whether finance has caught up to the energy demand that MISO just mapped. Watch for whether any other streaming platform follows Deezer in disclosing AI upload numbers, because the silence from Spotify and Apple, that's its own kind of data. And pay attention to next year's Beijing Robot Marathon, not for the winning time, but for the number of institutions that show up, because the winning time tells you how fast one team can go. The institutional count tells you how fast the floor is rising. We'll see you tomorrow.